Welcome to Unstoppable Stories That Move. I'm your host, Sally Head Dahlquist. I've traveled all over the world to run marathons and am fascinated by the ordinary people who do extraordinary things. They just won't quit. No matter what life throws at them, they keep going. Mile after mile, challenge after challenge, they find a way to push beyond their limits. So listen as these seemingly normal people share their stories of resilience from the race course and beyond, and inspire us to keep moving forward too. Let's get to it. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sally Head Dahlquist, zooming in from the frigid Nordic tundra of Afton, Minnesota. And I'm here with the unstoppable Dan Parker. Woo!
Good morning. I'm coming to you from Columbus, Georgia. I know it's got to be warmer than it is there.
Yeah. So Dan's the fastest blind man on earth. And today we're not going to talk about running, although he could do it. His passion is a different sport. He's a race car driver. He's a drag racer first and a blind man second. And in 2022, he set the Guinness Book of World Records for the fastest car while driven blindfolded at 211 miles per hour. So even though he was legally blind, he actually wore a blindfold to do this drag race test. You have a need for speed. And that is not Dan's only record. He was a professional race driver from age 18 to 42. He got diverted there for a while, took a short break after his accident. He set a Georgia state road racing record at age 14 for racing bicycles, right? Were you champion for that?
Yep. Mm-hmm. In my age category, yep.
In your age category for bicycles, riding a bike. You were world champion for other race car driving. You were the 2005 ADRL, which is the American Drag Racing League, Pro Nitrous World Champion for drag racing. And later, after your accident while blind, you won the FIM record at Bonneville on a motorcycle. And you're a racer first. That's your true identity. And you have found a purpose while continuing exploring your passion after your accident and being blind. So today, you're still in it. You're still in the world of racing, doing many things. So I'm really excited to talk to you. I've heard about you for so many years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I was born into a racing family. My mother was actually 8 months pregnant with me, and she drove her Chevelle to the drag strip, had a picnic set for the trunk. And my dad said, "Take that out. I'm going to drive both cars." So he got to the finals in both cars, and the track wasn't going to pay him first and second place money unless both cars went down the track. So my mom drove her Chevelle and won. Whether he let her win or not, we don't know, but because she since passed away. But my mom won a drag race when she was 8 months pregnant with me. And it's been downhill from there ever since.
So your parents were racers when I was growing up. Well, and still today, my oldest brother, Mikey, he's a racer too, a hardcore motorhead. And so all growing up and today, I have picked up a lot of the race car world from him. And there's a lot of different kinds of car racing. People don't really realize this. I mean, you hear a lot about Formula One, F1 in Monaco, and NASCAR racing, and there's late models and hobby stock. And tell us about your specialties, drag racing. What's that about?
So drag racing is 0 to whether the 1/8 mile or 1/4 mile, straight line, hardest acceleration you can go. So I started really bracket racing right after I graduated high school. And then around 1994, I graduated high school in 88. Around 1994, I started driving for other people. And then in 1997, I got the opportunity to drive my first what's called a pro modified car. So those are the fastest cars on the planet that still have working doors. We're talking 0 to 200 miles an hour in 4 seconds.
Wow.
0 to 75 in 1 second. 3.2 Gs of acceleration off start line. My whole life, I struggled in school academic-wise, but I excelled anything mechanical, and so that's why I worked at bicycle shops from the time I was 13 to 18 years old, and I just always was attracted to anything mechanical and introduced the sport of drag racing early, and then later, got some amazing opportunities to drive for people and become a world champion.
Yeah. So you are a professional car driver. And then I was wondering, are you still considered a pro driver?
No, I was sort of semi-pro. I guess a professional means you make your full-time living off of it, and I wasn't that way. But now, because there's no money in land speed racing. It's a pretty much a one-way avenue. Not making any money off of it, but been blessed to have some amazing opportunities. After I went blind, I designed and built a motorcycle, set the record at Bonneville, and then later designed and built the Corvette to go for the Guinness World Record for the fastest car driven blindfolded, and was able to accomplish it on March 31st, 2022, exactly 10 years to the date of the wreck that took my eyesight.
Yeah. Yeah. My brother said, yeah, with auto racing, you don't make a lot of money. If you're comfortable taking $100 and flushing it down the toilet, then you can be a racer.
I used to have a boss that had a picture frame in his office, and he was a racer, and it was like the definition. It says race car, then the little symbols for definition. It said a black hole to which to throw money into.
Yeah. So why do you think you have a need for speed? What drives you for that?
I've always just, my dad raced what's called stock and super stock. So those are classes that you really have to be able to refine your combination to maximize the performance out of something. And that was always one of my excelled, techniques of how I tune cars. And so I love the challenge of the tuning side of it.
Yeah.
And I'd take off my tuner's cap and I'd put on my racing helmet and the thrill of the competition, to be able to go up against world champions and to know that you brought something a whole lot less money involved, a grassroots effort, and know that you and several friends put something together, and you're able to beat world champions is so fulfilling. Some people hunt and I guess get that type of a thrill or whatever, but mine was always drag racing and be able to excel and win races and set records, win championships.
I think it's the human need to be the best, to maximize your performance. And when you're excelling, you are literally accelerating in the car. And you talk about tuning, car tuning and stuff. And I first heard about you in 2021. We have mutual friends through my brother, Mark Dahlquist, who's not related to me. He spells his last name a little differently. Mm-hmm. He's a racer up in Fargo, North Dakota, who was on your pit crew for your land speed record.
Yeah, Mark's a super good guy, very smart, very talented. I've been blessed, for the Guinness record to have people from California to North Dakota to Florida to New Hampshire all volunteer to help me. It's really been amazing.
Yeah, when Mark was talking about it, my brother and I were like, oh, we should just hop in the camper and go down there. We should drive. We should do it. Because you did it at the spaceport in New Mexico, and we didn't. He's working full time and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, we should have gone. Mark talks about it so much. Yep. Well, and then Mark and my brother also worked on some of his dyno competitions where you just have the motor and you're trying to generate horsepower. Yep. And when he gets together with my husband and my other brother-in-laws, they just sit around and look at all these numbers. And I imagine you're exactly like that.
Exactly. I call it the curse of the inventive mind.
Yeah.
That you're always thinking about the next improvement, the next thing to test, the next modification. And that's what makes a racer tick. That's what keeps us awake at nighttime. That's what gets us out of the bed early in the morning time, is you're always trying to think of how to improve your operation, to go faster, more efficient, everything. And it's just a constant quest there's no perfection, but it's a constant quest for improvements.
How fast are the fastest cars these days?
So Brittany Force went 343 miles an hour in 1,000 foot. So they say they make 12,000 horsepower. That's 0 to 343 miles an hour in 3.5 seconds, basically.
Okay, so for comparisons, how much horsepower is in like a typical Toyota Camry?
200 horsepower.
Okay.
So you have 12,000 horsepower, and in the car that I wrecked, it had about 2,500 horsepower. And so the car set the land speed record with, it had 800 horsepower on motor, about 900 horsepower with a little bit of nitrous turned on that we used. So these sort of give you a perspective of how much it takes to go the speeds. 0 to 340 in 1,000 feet is just astronomical amount of horsepower.
Wow. So when you turn the nitro on, does that give you an additional 900 horsepower? Is it bring it up to 900?
It brought it up to 900. So it's adjustable. They call it a kit. So I can increase the horsepower anywhere from 100 to 300 or 400 horsepower just by adjusting the tune-up if I needed to.
Okay. Nitrous oxide, or some of these engines are only run on nitrous, and some engines basically have a turbo boost. How would you explain that?
So my motors was considered mainly naturally aspirated, so it makes 800 horsepower just drawn through atmospheric air. But then you have turbos and superchargers that forces air into the motor, because engine is just basically an air pump. So the more air you can put through it, the more fuel you can burn. The fuel makes the horsepower. So a turbocharger or supercharger is now today's world's crazy amount of air they're forcing through the engine's 50, 75, 100 pounds of boost. Whereas a top fuel dragster, what makes them so crazy is they're running about 92% nitromethane fuel, which is an extremely volatile race fuel, and it makes crazy amount of horsepower, but it's also very dangerous as far as tuning, because if something goes wrong, you have massive explosions.
Okay. I know with my my brother kind of always drilled it into me with maintaining vehicles, avoid the ethanol gas, buy premium if you can, and always change the oil, use synthetic oil, change it more often. And you guys use special racing gas. I know racers use special racing gas. It's not what you get at the pump normally.
Oh, no, the premium at the pump is 93 octane. The fuel that we were using in the land speed car is 116 octane. The fuel that we used in the pro modified car is about 125 octane.
Wow. Okay.
Very expensive.
Yes. I think about my brother going to the auto parts store. It's kind of like me going to the fabric store. You look around, you go, oh, I want that and that and that and that.
Exactly. Yeah. We go to the speed shop and, our eyes will get big,
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been in the auto racing world your whole life, since pre-birth even. That's pretty amazing. Even in the womb. And then what was your regular day job? You had a chassis business. What were you doing?
Yes, I own Parker Chassis, where I designed and built race cars and motorcycles for people all around the world, actually. Mainly, obviously America, and I had some customers in Canada. And the Sheik of Cutter actually owned 3 drag bike motorcycles that I built for Star Racing. That's what I did every day. I worked my hands. I was a machinist, welder, fabricator. Mm-hmm. I love creating and bending tubes and designing the chassis, and took pride in my work, took pride in my welding, my attention to detail, and just, was blessed to do what I enjoyed, the gifts that God gave me to work my hands, and that's what I was meant to do. And so after blindness, I just tried to decide I wasn't going to let blindness take away my passions and keep doing it.
Yeah, and you were working as a teacher for a while too?
Yes, after I went blind, I worked part-time as a parapro at a local high school teaching machine shop, and just completely unheard of in today's world to allow, a blind person to teach kids around dangerous equipment. But I had a principal, Amy Woolard, that believed in me, and I took the state parapro certification test, passed it, and just loved working with the kids. But sadly, my worst injury, my wreck, is not my blindness. It's my traumatic brain injury. And so it just got too overwhelming for me. I had to quit the job. I would work Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mm-hmm. And with a brain injury, I suffer what's called neurofatigue. Every day about lunchtime, I have to take a nap. Well, obviously, I couldn't do that at school. So by the time I got home about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I would lay down, fall asleep. I would not wake up till the next morning. I would not eat dinner. I wouldn't see Jennifer, my wife, and it just got too much. And so it wasn't good for my health, my health long term. I had to step away from it. But I loved working with kids.
How long were you doing that? Wasn't it a couple of years?
Almost, I think 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imagining your job application, all the qualifications. I'm sure you're more than qualified as a machinist.
Yeah, I had a friend at the school district that believed in me, and Amy, the principal, when she called the district headquarters, said, what the situation was, she want to hire me, and they're like, how's he gonna get around the school? Who's gonna help him? She's like, he's got this. This is no problem. Nobody has to babysit him. If you meet him, you'll understand. And so I spent some time before school started learning my way to navigate around the school. And after I went blind, I attended the Louisiana Center for the Blind for 9 months. It's an adult training program that teaches you blindness skills, cane travel, which was the main reason I wanted to go, computers, braille, home ec, and they also teach wood shop 2 hours a day, not necessarily as an employment skill, but as a confidence builder. So if you can operate a table saw with your finger 1 inch away from the blade safely, it helps you build confidence that you can take on other things in the world. So with my cane travel skills, I could walk around school, go anywhere I needed to, and I just blended in with everybody else the best I could.
Yeah, you told me to watch one of your videos on the Steve Harvey show, Blind Man Proposes. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cute, and you started using this new camera on your glasses. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's called an Orcam. So it's a little camera about the size of a tube of lipstick, and so it attaches on your glasses, and then you can give it verbal commands, and it'll take pictures and read products, labels, identify color, identify money. You can read a book. And so the technology is so amazing in today's world. I've only been blind since 2012. I can't imagine being blind 25, 50, or 100 years ago. And it's just rapidly growing every day. AI is helping the blind. And, it's hard for me to adapt to it. I'm 55 years old. I tell her I'm a hammer and chisel person. I'm not a technology person. But I try to do the best I can in learning and using the adaptive products that helps our daily lives. It's really amazing, a lot of the stuff that's out nowadays. The iPhone, for instance, is one of the industry leaders in accessibility. Apple, I was an Apple user before I went blind, but they take accessibility very serious. They have a setting, it's called VoiceOver. So it reads everything to me on the screen as I'm typing or as I'm scrolling Facebook or reading emails or anything. It's just truly opened up the world for the blind.
Yeah, I saw the setting on my phone. And we also have a mutual friend, Annie Young, who's an artist here in Minnesota, not far from me. And actually, I'm friends with her husband, Ray, who's another crazy marathoner dude. And together they went down to Antarctica to run the marathon with Ray. And she had made this display in the MSP airport of their journey to Antarctica to run this marathon. And then as I'm reading this, I'm realizing, well, Annie's blind and she made all this art, and she wasn't able to complete the marathon down there, but she finally did her first marathon here in the summer. And she speaks very highly of you and was excited that
she's a great person.
She says hi. And so when I've been around her, I could hear her phone, talking super fast to her all the time when anything comes in. And you just have to get used to it because it talks like the guy on the FedEx commercials.
And it's blind people, some people run their phones at 100% speech rate. It's crazy fast. So I run mine about 65%. And even my friends are like, I can't understand that. But I can't imagine how, some really long-term blind people run theirs at 90, 100% because it's totally, I'm like, there's no way you understood everything they just said.
Yeah.
And they do. Jack, one of the computer teachers at LCB, he did not even have a monitor for his computer. It wasn't going to do him any good. So it's crazy. People would walk in through the computer lab and he would be working. There's no monitor. He's like, well, I need it for. I can't see it. And, just like me, one of the things we can do is we can turn our screen off. So the screen is solid black. So it just saves battery life. And people walk up, your phone's not working. I'm like, it's working. It's talking to me in my earbuds right now, and it's a slow process to learn it. There's a lot of swipes and combinations of gestures, 2-finger double tap hangs up a phone call, 3-finger quadruple tap copies and paste. So there's so many gestures that you have to learn to be able to navigate. And do somewhat normal, simple tasks that you can do with the phone.
Maybe we should go back a little bit and talk about your race accomplishments. So you're currently using a lot of these new adaptive technologies, and you ran this, you set this world speed record technically while blindfolded, which is a little ironic because you certainly don't need that. But any other sighted person could challenge you for this record. And I know there was a lot of technology involved to keep you on course. So you also did this unassisted to beat a record that was already set by Mike Newman. How did that come about? What did you need to accomplish your land speed record? 211 miles an hour.
Yes. So not about 6 months after I went blind, I'm open about this. I was on the verge of suicide. And I went to bed one night thinking about my late brother and my mom, who both passed away. My brother Chris always loved the Bonneville Salt Flats. And he told me a story about 4 guys from France that built a 50cc motorcycle, and they designed it where they could take it apart and put their luggage. They flew to the United States, rented a car, drove to Bonneville, put the motorcycle together, and each got a record with without sidecar, with without fairing. I went to bed that night, and I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning from the most vivid dream that I would build a motorcycle and become the first blind man to race Bonneville. I had no idea if any blind person had raced Bonneville. That was what was sent to me in my dream. And now I realize it was a purpose sent to me by God. And that's what saved my life, because it took my mind off of suicide to a task at hand, which was my forte, working on race cars and motorcycles. So obviously I didn't know how I was going to navigate the salt. I didn't know of any other blind land speed racers at the time. So I called the smartest person I know, a friend of mine, Patrick Johnson, that works at Boeing Phantom Works. And I asked him, I said, is this possible to build like a guidance system that will give me feedback so I know how to stay on course? And Patrick's words were, oh, that's easy. If that's all you need to do, start building a motorcycle. And I'm like, okay. So literally in 10 months, we designed and built the motorcycle all at my house. I made it a 3-wheeler because when I first reached out to the racing organization, they told me they wouldn't even consider letting me race unless I made it a 3-wheeler to take balance out of the equation. I'm like, well, you're a football field, so we got to play by your rules. And that's what I did. So Patrick built me a guidance system. So we plot the center line of the course through GPS. The computer now knows a theoretical center line. If I go 1 foot right or left, I get a tone in that ear. The further off center I go, the tone increases. Like if I'm going to the right, I get a tone in my right ear. It might go, doo, 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 doo. And so I know if it's a really high pitch, I'm far off center.
Okay.
If I go too far, the computer shuts off the motorcycle. When I go to the finish line, it shut it off. And the chase truck could remotely shut it off and say if they saw a fire or something, a warning or something dangerous. I had the wreck in 12. I went to Bonneville in 2013, became the first blind man to race Bonneville. Had some problems with the Bureau of Land Management and my driver's license. I returned in 14. I'll tell that story. So I returned in 14 and set my FIM class record for the 51 to 85 cc 2-stroke single at 62 miles an hour. Yes, so the first year we were practicing the day before to prove all the technology, and the Salt Lake City Tribune came, the newspaper. And so the morning of the first day of the event, they had a full front page article about me and my story. Well, the Bureau of Land Management caught wind of it and sent a fax to the motorcycle speed trials and said, listen, he's blind, so obviously he doesn't have a driver's license. Everybody that races on the salt is required to have a driver's license. You're in jeopardy of losing your lease.
Oh, wow.
I already made my first official pass at 55.331 miles an hour, and we're in the pits getting ready for the second pass, and the race officials pull up. And they said, we got a problem. We got to have a talk. That's okay. We sat down. Tom Birkland was on my right. Delvine, that now owns the speed trial, she was on my left. Tom told me about the facts and that, the trouble that they were in. I said, listen, I'm a racer. I'm not going to jeopardize the 300 racers here, but I'll regroup from this. But I said, I might have a solution. So Jennifer went and got my wallet, and I handed my driver's license. And he says, is it expired? I said, nope, because at this point, it only been a little over a year from the wreck.
Yeah.
And Delvine sighed like she just beat a murder rap. That's what I tell everybody. And so Tom said, have you gotten a letter stating the revoke? I said, not that I've seen. He said, okay. And he says, it says corrective eye lenses required. So I pulled my Oakley sunglasses down on my face. He goes, who in the heck am I to say they're not corrective? So they took my license and they faxed it back to the BLM. And about 4 hours in, we were loading up the motorcycle. We figured that, it was over with because it was getting towards the end of the day. They came flying up. They said, unload that thing. You're good. So we tried to get back in the stage lanes, and the clock already ran out for the day. We were already scheduled to leave the next morning, so we couldn't make any more passes.
Mm-hmm.
And one touching thing that we did before we left is when I was building the motorcycle, I built the oversized push bar for the back of the motorcycle, and I put Krista's ashes in it. And before I left, I unbolted it and unscrewed it, and Jennifer walked me out on the salt, and I spread his ashes at salt where he'd want to be.
Aww.
We came home, and I knew my license was going to expire before the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So I did all kinds of study and research, and a friend of mine at the time was one of the head state troopers in the state of Alabama, and I called him, and he said, listen, he said, I got retired in a couple of years. I ain't getting in trouble. I'm going to tell you how to get around this. He says, in Alabama, probate judge can renew your driver's license, and they don't have an eye test machine. So a friend knew the probate judge. He called him, and I told him what the deal was. He said, listen, he trying to drive on the road. He just needs it so he can race. He goes, I don't care. Just bring him on there. That's like, if he's trying to be safe, that's fine. So I renewed my driver's license. Then also, typical government, they're not going to tell you how to do something. They're just going to tell you no. Well, again, using my iPhone, I found out in lieu of a driver's license to drive on BLM property, you can take a Utah off-road state course, online test. So I did that. I got my BLM permit. So when I turned 14, I went to registration. I handed my driver's license and my BLM permit, and they looked at them and they said, I don't even want to ask. I said, they're all legit. I said, what makes a good racer is not reading the black and white in the rule book, it's reading the gray areas. And I found the gray areas. And so, they're good. And I was able to race all week, not a problem one from BLM or anybody, and set a record. And all was good. Once I came home, the itch was still there. Went several years. So that was in 14. And in 2017, I decided I was going for the Guinness record for the fastest car driven blindfolded. And as you stated before, it was held by Mike Newman in England at 200.5 miles per hour. So Mike will always be the legend first blind man to run 200. And we're friends. We're really good friends. And so I had a van. I sold it, and I bought a 2008 Corvette that was a flood salvage car. And to say it was rough would be an understatement. It had no motor, no interior, but I knew it had, my uncle looked at it. It was in Oklahoma City, and it had good bones. So me and three guys drove a turn and burn all the way to Oklahoma from Georgia and back, picked it up, and that's what started the project. And countless hours of designing, working on it here in the shop. I had so many people volunteer their time, donate money, donate product, sponsorships, and then that's what sort of started me down the path of making my pens. So started 17, the fall of 19, the car was painted, the roll cage was in it. A lot of the work was done, but I still did not have a motor. I had a lot of the parts, but did not have a complete motor. And the producers of Jay Leno's Garage reached out to me, said they wanted to film me. And I asked, how late can we put this off for this season? They said, end of February. So once I got a commitment from them, they allowed me to get some corporate sponsors to finish the car. When we arrived at the spaceport in 2020, February 2020, the car had never been a quarter mile under its own power. We were trying a totally different new guidance system, had all kinds of problems. On Saturday, 2 cars ran off the end of the spaceport, put us way behind, and Chris Lopez, the director of the spaceport, came around about 5 o'clock, and he said, how are y'all looking? And Jimmy, my crew chief, said, not good. He said, Chris, what do you need? He said, we need time. He says, the fixing closes down at 5, and We've only made one partial pass. And Chris said, listen, I run this place. You know, he says, here's a special pass to get out of the gate. I'm going to tell security we have our own fire and rescue. Stay here all night, do whatever you need to do. So Jimmy knew that my brain injury, I needed a rest. We were trying some new stuff with the guidance system that I was not adapting to quick enough. So Patrick sat in the car for 3 hours, reprogramming it. I went and took a nap in the truck. They started testing, and I didn't even know it. I was so tired. Long story short, at 2:30 in the morning on a runway with no lights, we had rental cars, and Mark was there right beside us. I drove 116 miles an hour and outrunning the rental cars, and Jimmy's riding beside me. He's like, listen, we got this, you know, we're good. So the next morning, filming for Leno, I was the first car down the track. And Steve Strupp rode with me during the day. He owns the East Coast Time Association. So we're getting in the car, getting strapped in, and there's GoPro cameras and film people everywhere. And I tell Steve, I said, you see that steering wheel in front of you? Because the car has 2 steering wheels. So while we're testing all this technology, if somebody needs to take an emergency takeover, they can. I said, don't touch that steering wheel unless you're fearful of your life. I said, I got this. So we start the pass, and I'm rolling into the throttle and getting up speed. I'm getting settled in. I get in a good sweet spot where I feel comfortable. Patrick sees 120 miles an hour come up on the telemetry screen for the command center. 130 miles an hour comes up. He goes, he's going for it. 140, he goes, oh, he's really going for it. I went through the mile and a half, 153 miles, 153.8 miles per hour. And that was the first full pass on the car. We filmed the Leno that if you research Motor Trend, Jay Leno's Garage, risk versus rewards, we're on the episode. Well, then right after that is when COVID hit, and I thought for sure my racing was over with. But then the president of the National Federation of the Blind, Mark Riccobono, who was with me in Bonneville when I raced the motorcycle, the NFB-sponsored motorcycle, reached out to me. He said that he would like to see if we could set the Guinness record in 2011, because that would be the 10-year anniversary of the Blind Driver Challenge, which is a car that NFB developed with Virginia Tech that allows a blind person to drive a car through vibration motors across the hands, tells, you know, left and right, up and down the back, stop, go, accelerate. If you go to YouTube, search Blind Driver Challenge Daytona, there's a neat video of President Riccobono driving around the Daytona Motor Speedway. He was running about 30 miles an hour. It wasn't an exhibition of speed, it was an exhibition of proof of concept that what is possible. Steve Strupp on ECTA got COVID into 2021 really bad. Luckily, he lived. We had to postpone it till 2022. Had to get Tim Kelly from the Loring Time Association to do the clocks, because Steve was still not healthy enough to do it. Get to Spaceport first day, the winds are 50 miles per hour side wind. Typically in land speed racing, they stop at 17 miles an hour for safety. So I didn't drive the race car on day one. On day two, I did drive the practice car, which is, I call it test dummy. I could run about 110, 120.
How many hours of seat time did you actually have in the car before you got your record?
A lot. Because one thing I learned is practice and confidence is so critical. So the race car is like a thoroughbred. You can't drive it much. So I bought a rough 94 Corvette, and we named it Test Dummy. And so Patrick would fly down his plane from North Alabama. We would drive to my local drag strip, Phoenix City drag strip, the same one that Mom won that race when I was, in a room. And we would practice for 2 or 3 hours, come home, and Patrick would fly home that day. And we probably did that 5 or 6, 8 times. Then we took Test Dummy all the way to New Mexico with us. We set the record just so I could practice while the team was working on the car and straighten out some things, and it'd get my mind off the problems we were having. The day one, we practiced a bunch of Test Dummy. The team was working on the race car because it was a totally new combination. We were having some problems. Day two, I went 158 first pass, 184 or 5 second pass with 40 mile an hour crosswinds. So day three, all the pressure was on. We were having problems. I only really slept an hour. I woke up. I knew we needed what was called a push bar, and maybe push the car off. Me and the team got the desert before the sun came up. Built a push bar in case we needed it. At noon, I still had not cracked 200 miles an hour. I'd been like 190, I think, 185.
So you had 4 days to do this, right? And you have to do
Three.
at least 2
Yep.
passes, right? To get the record
That's right. Yep.
out and back.
Yep.
Once out and once back.
Yep. Yep. I had 3 days. So the last day at noon, I still not cracked 200 with 5 hours left on the lease. So to set the Guinness record, you have to go one direction. Within 1 hour, you have to go the opposite direction. So wind helps you one way, it hurts you the other, it averages out. If you go through that clock at 1 hour and 1 second, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So at noon, I hadn't been 200. I went to the left front corner of my truck trying to get away from everybody. There's pictures of me. I had no idea that people are taking pictures. I sat down and prayed. I said, God, I said, if this is not your will for me to have this record, I'll accept that. Only thing I ask is next time I crank that car up, feel so every connecting rod out the block, give my team a reason we failed. Let me tote this burden out this gate, not them. A few minutes later, Jason said, I think we got something you can work with. Suit up. So we suited up, and the next pass, I went 205. I was having a fight a bunch, and we brought it back to the pits. I made some calls on some shock adjustments. Me and Jason worked on the steering. The team went over the car. So about 2:30, we got on the runway. My first pass was 210 and some change. My backup pass was 212 and some change. So roughly about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I set the Guinness record, 10 years and almost 10 years to the hour of the wreck that took my eyesight at 211.043 miles per hour for the fastest car driven blindfolded, which also makes me the world's fastest blind man.
Yeah.
And Mike Newman was the first person I called. He had been keeping up with me on the internet and getting updates. And I thought it would be out of respect. I wanted to call Mike and let him know that I was able to get record. And he congratulated me. And he's very instrumental in supporting me the whole way. Mike has held 14 Guinness records so far in his lifetime. He's the fastest car driven blindfolded, the fastest boat speed. He's flown an airplane, driven a truck. I mean, a motorcycle. I mean, got all kinds of records. And so, really good guy.
I know, looking at some of the racers at Indy, and we were just in Monaco walking around the Formula One course, and they have these old awards like we're in the 100 club, when they finally break 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
And now it's the 200 club for sure. And you're saying now 300 and 400 club is kind of on the horizon.
Oh, yeah. At Bonneville, they're actually looking for the 500 club because there's been several people in the 400 club. Just to give you how hard at Bonneville, it's a lot tougher to get the 200 club there. Just because you run 200 doesn't mean you get in the club. You actually have to set a class record and at BR 200. There's been more people walk on the moon than there is in the Bonneville 200 mile an hour club.
Wow.
Give you perspective how hard it is. It's tough.
It's tough. And this all got you off the couch, unstoppable, because you had this dream. You heard kind of the voice calling you. I see this as kind of a theme. I always feel this too, this voice pushing me to keep going. There's always more you can do. Oh, you shouldn't stop. Oh, you should try and do this. I should help this person. You should, always more that you can do with your talents. And having this vision and dream gave you a purpose.
Exactly. We all need a purpose. That's what keeps you sane. That's what keeps you off the couch, And I've always been a goal-oriented type person, loving to push the limits of what's possible. And purpose is what saved me. Point blank, that's what saved me. And so still today, I run all my machine shop equipment. I've been out in the shop 2 hours this morning before we started recording this, working on my pens. And we all have to have purpose in our life, something to work towards, to keep your mind occupied, to work, to keep your body moving, stay active. And I think that's the best health care that you can do for yourself.
Yeah. I love this quote. You said, I lost my eyesight, but not my vision.
Exactly. We don't need eyesight to have vision, because vision is imagining and believing in something which you can't see. My charity is called blindfaith.org, and blind faith is believing in something for which there is no evidence. And that's a lot of what I do. Is some people call it crazy, some people call it stupid, some people call it waste of time. But these projects I do is pushing the limits for what's possible for the blind.
Yeah. If you can dream it, believe it, why not try and make it come true?
Some people might consider a curse, but I've always been able to think outside the box. solutions and problem solving. And that's what, you got to keep your mind going in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, with all this car talk, I'm wondering how many junk cars are currently in your yard right now?
None. Now, before the wreck, we had a few. We lived out in the country then.
Yeah.
I had 3.5 acres, and so I had an old '51 Chevrolet pickup truck that was going to be Jennifer's.
Yep.
I had a '65 Suburban that was mine, and I actually had bought a '49 Suburban from Oklahoma, and a friend of mine was bringing it to me the day of the wreck, so I never got to see it. And sadly, we had to sell everything, trying to keep the lights on, and I had to sell the house out in the country because it just wasn't feasible to live in the country. And so we have a lot smaller place, so there's no room for much to linger around here. But if I had my choice, I'd have at least 10 of them.
Yeah. All the racers usually have a whole bunch of cars hanging out for spare parts.
Yeah, exactly.
You are very active. Tell us, I know you were really, really worried, as soon as you had your accident and realized this blindness is lifelong, that you're going to lose your house, your livelihood, all of it. It's a dramatic, life-changing moment that kind of gives you a before and after. So you really had to start over, and yet you're still giving back to help the community. You're making these pens, these writing pens, and you're helping out with the new bicycles with Auburn University. And then now also Hot Wheels contacted you. You got a lot going on. Fill us in.
Yes. So during the Corvette build, I started one of the projects I had for the students at the high school was making, in wood turning, they have what's called, wood turning, they make pens. So the part of the pens is wood, and then you buy these kits that's actually the ink cartridge and the twist mechanism. So I taught the students how to make their own pens. Well, I had some pen kits because I did that at home. And one night I made 5 pens and polished them, and I put them on Facebook. I said, I'm going to send these to some sponsors. If people like to donate $50, I'll send you a pen. The next morning I had 12 people donate $50.
Wow.
And that started the pen business. My website is theblindmachinist.com, where they're sold. You can check them out. I have made hundreds of pens over the years, and now I have what's called my Made in America pen I designed 100% by myself during COVID. It's 100% hand machined by me, all American products, including the ink cartridge. And they're expensive. It's a really piece of craftsmanship. Then I'm working with Auburn University and Boston University on bicycle projects for the blind. They're 2 different type of projects. So Auburn is what's called platooning. So 2 bicycles, the lead bike is ridden by a sighted person. So all these are 3-wheel recumbents, very low sitting for stability, 2 wheels up front, 1 in the back. So the platooning, the sighted person rides the lead bike, and then my bike follows it electronically. So the lead person's providing navigation, obstacle avoidance, everything, and then my bike is following it. And so that would open up families getting out exercise, which is socialization. And maybe a triathlete could race independently, not being on the back of a tandem. And so, when I first went blind, the first staggering thing I learned was the unemployment rate for the blind is 70% in America. It's 99% worldwide. Mm-hmm. Transportation is one of the leading factors. So we stay at home. We don't get exercise like we should. I'm just as guilty as anybody. And so I think these bicycles could just open up so many opportunities for exercise, socialization, independence. Then the BU project is actually going to be a fully, basically autonomous bike that you pedal, and it's going to have self-driving technology. So the goal we've given the students is I live about 2 miles away from a Chick-fil-A back to the neighborhood. And the goal we've given the students is for me to be able to ride to Chick-fil-A, get out, sit down, eat lunch, get back in the Velomobile, which is a form of a 3-wheel recumbent, and then ride home 100% by myself.
I love that you're going to get some chicken.
Yeah. And my goal is for these to be one day to be mass produced. And just imagine the BU project. If a blind person had a 2 or 3 mile radius of their house, and they could put in saved destinations, the grocery store, their job, the bank, and to be able to say, all right, let's go to the bank and get in the bike, and it does everything but the pedaling. So then you're out exercising, you're having independence and freedom, you're doing life as everybody else does independently on your own. And so that just one day, if this comes true, that happens, that'd be just a legacy that I hope to leave for the blind. Because I think today's world is possible. I have some amazing professors at BU and Auburn that believe in both projects. And so we're just chipping away at it. My nonprofit is blindfaith.org. We need all the donations we can get and go to the website because these aren't cheap projects, but they're possible projects. They're not, and with today's technology, it's not impossible. They're possible. We just got to put all the Legos in one project together.
They're still in research and development. You've got great proof of concept, and now you need to make more prototypes and then come up with a final commercial version. You know, it's the same steps of laboratory research, which is my backyard. You know, and I've heard that when most people drive their car, they're doing errands, it's 3 miles or less. Like you said, if you could go 2 to 3 miles within your house, you can be more self-sufficient, independent. I think everybody wants to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Nobody likes to rely on other people. It's hard for me to ask for help, you know, and I'm pretty independent. And
that's one of the hardest things for me to accept is you lose your independence, you feel like a burden, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a hard mental thing to fight. You know, I'm real about it. You know, it's tough. I've had a good support system. I've been able to accomplish some great things, pushing limits for what society deems possible for the blind. But we're going to keep pushing limits even more. But, you know, when you realize that, and when I woke up out of the coma, it took a day before everybody realized I was blind because I was so drugged up on all the pain medication in and out of consciousness from the coma. I didn't realize I couldn't see. And then Jennifer, my sister, would notice if they walked at my bedside, if they spoke, it would startle me. And my pupils weren't constricting. So they called the doctor. The next day, the ophthalmologist come there and put my head in that little machine and turn the lights on. He said, "What do you see?" I said, "I don't see anything." I said, I can feel the heat, but I can't see anything. And he took my head out of the machine. He says, "You're 100% blind. You will be for the rest of your life." And that was just a gut punch. You know, at that one moment, I knew I lost everything. My business, my racing career, I would lose my house. You know, just it's tough.
What about health insurance?
I was blessed the day I had the wreck. I had health insurance. I had a health scare a few years earlier. I went several years without insurance because I'd gotten divorced. And but I had health insurance, and it was a saving grace because I can't imagine what my hospital bills would have been. I know they were still expensive, even with the insurance, but I can't imagine what it would be without it. You know, because I was in the hospital for a month. I was in a induced coma for 2 weeks. Completely had to reconstruct this whole right arm. I was in a step-down unit for a week, then a rehab for a week. And so, like I said, I was at UAB hospital for right at a month. Mm-hmm. I lost 33 pounds in 30 days. I was 200 the day of the wreck and 167 when I came home.
Oh, can I ask what you're at now?
217. I weighed yesterday morning. So, you know, I need to be out exercising more.
Yeah,
definitely.
I know my husband. We moved recently, and he lost like 25 pounds doing this move, and now he's packing it back on again. It's like you got to keep moving, you know.
It is, and I just bought the 2 recumbents I have. I have them donated to the Auburn Project. I just bought another one I found on Marketplace cheap, and I have a roller, exercise roller, and my friend Steven made me this stand to hold the recumbent and use it as an exercise machine. And that's I plan on getting back on there soon to try to lose these pounds. I've always been one. In the summertime, I would slim down. In the wintertime, I'd thicken up because I'm not racing. I'm not at the drag strip in my fire suit all the time, just sweating all the time. And so a friend of mine told me one time, he goes, "Your weight fluctuates more than you might know." Well, I've always hated wintertime, and then, you know, and not being at the racetrack, I put some pounds back on.
So how cold does it get down there in your part of Georgia?
Typically, the lowest is in the 20s at nighttime. We might have some teens every now and then, but you know, the harshest part of the winter, 25, 30 degrees in the morning, 45 maybe in the afternoon. That's maybe once every 10 years we might have a little bit of snow. So it's nothing like y'all get up there.
Yeah, the high today where I'm at is 20 degrees.
There's no way I can live that. But what's crazy is one of the students that went to LCB with me, she's from the Minneapolis area, and she swore, she said, we had some snow days and some ice days down there, and she said, this feels colder than it does at home. She said, I don't know if it's the humidity makes it even worse, but she said it felt colder in Louisiana at 25 degrees. She said, did it home at 15 degrees, and I don't. So when I want to go to one of the blind schools, back then, NFB had a center in Minnesota, Colorado, and Louisiana. Since the Minnesota's closed down because of the lease for the building, I'm like, I'm not going to Minnesota or Colorado because I want no snow. And we still end up having some in Louisiana one of the days,
Well, in Minnesota, when the temperature drops and the humidity drops like crazy. So in wintertime, we have something like 6% humidity, which is lower than the Sahara Desert. It is so dry.
That's what Amy was saying. Yeah, she said the humidity was rough. Down here, going out to shop at, dead middle of summer, at 6:30 in the morning, it is 75 degrees and 95% humidity.
Wow.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning. And so I already had my air conditioner on in the shop just to cool, but also to dehumidify it so all my machinery doesn't rust.
Yeah.
And so that's a real problem. Yep.
Yeah, we got to keep it greased up, lubed up. Yeah, one of my friend Dina had noticed, when people from the South say they're going to travel to the North, they say, oh, but I'm going to be cold. And people from the North who travel South go, oh, but it's so hot down there. I'm going to be hot.
Yeah.
So I saw something that maybe you're planning to bike across Georgia.
That's what I want with the platooning project, the one from Auburn.
Is
there's a thing called the brag, the bike ride across Georgia. They rotate it. So for several years, it was starting in Savannah and ending in my city in Columbus, right in front of the bicycle shop I worked at after I went blind for a little while. And I don't know, they started changing the route. But that's the goal, is the hope. I was hoping to do it 2026. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe 2027 to do the bike ride across Georgia with the bike project. Yep.
So you said you get your neural fatigue. How many hours can you ride at a time when you got to take breaks?
Probably, because I don't know yet. I've not ridden much, but
okay.
I'm gonna probably say 5 or 6. Realistically, I think I could 50 miles a day probably my limit. Is what I'm thinking. So if I could do 50 a day, that's good. And I know it gets better. Also, at home now, I have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And so I'm trying to do everything I can to help heal my brain. And it is helping. Earlier this year, when we filmed for Hot Wheels a few months ago.
Yeah.
Normally I crashed during the middle of the day, but I stayed awake all 3 days, no problem.
Yeah. So what's going on with Hot Wheels?
So Hot Wheels reached out to me, and they had this really cool video series called Local Icons on all their social media. And they wanted to film, my story. So a few months ago, they came here. I've been putting together a 94 Mustang Cobra, what's called a drag and drive event. And they filmed me, my friend Jay Blake, who owns Top Fuel Funny Car. He's blind. And we taught Jay how to drive the Cobra using the guidance system. And it's really cool. The episode was supposed to originally come out this past Friday. They had some delays, so it's supposed to come out in the next few weeks. Maybe by the time this episode airs, you can just look up Hot Wheels Garage, Local Icons, Dan Parker, and hopefully you should be able to find it. It's going to be really neat. I talked to the producer. He said the final edit, they're great. I talked to Allie from Hot Wheels the other day through text, and she said they turned out really good. So just waiting on them to be released, and they'll be out anytime.
Is that the little Hot Wheels cars, or is that something different?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Same cars we played with as kids.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. They were really good to work with, and they will share my story and hope, share it with other, car people and kids. And, one thing I hope that when we're kids, we're all guilty. If we see somebody different than us, we might exclude them. And now I hope with my story reaching, the younger audience, that if they have another blind student or person with disability, student with disability, that they'll realize that they can, be just like them and enjoy activities and be a friend, and if stuff like that comes out of it, and that's what it's supposed to be about right there.
Well, and racing is a sport that anyone can do, regardless of your size, your gender,
Yep.
your color.
Exactly. That's what I love about drag racing. They don't care what color you are, what gender you are, anything. It's the most inclusive sport there is. There's a man, he might be a good person to interview. I can't think of his name. He's known as the armless archer.
Oh, yeah.
He shoots bow and arrows with no arms, and he drag races with no arms. He's amazing. He went 200-something miles an hour. And, there's people with disabilities, there's world champion females, and it's just amazing. And everybody says, when you roll a gate, we're all the same. That's how it is in drag racing. That's where I've always grown up. Everybody's there to race and have fun and compete against each other. When the helmets are on, you're enemies, but as soon as you go to the finish line, we're back being friends. And there's been times at racetrack, we were at 80-rail race, and the person that had to race the next round came up to me and said, "We will get a freebie this round." I said, "How come?" He said, "My wheelie bars are broke." I said, "That's all that's wrong with you?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Get them off and bring them to me." He brought me his wheelie bars. I welded them up, fixed them for him so he could race the next round, even though I would have a freebie if I didn't. But that's not how I was raised, and that's how drag racers are. We want to do the right thing to help our fellow competitors, and that carries over into life too.
Yeah, helping others helps yourself.
Exactly.
Helping others makes the world better.
It does. It does. There's no better gift than the one given. Giving a gift to somebody that helps them it's more rewarding than receiving a gift, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know if we should mention this, but there was an incident a couple of years ago. I wanted to clarify that at one of the racetracks, there was one of the African-American drivers, and people were having a fit because somebody put a noose on his garage door. And I was like, no, all the garage doors use a little noose as a handle. It wasn't an incident.
That's been totally discredited. It was false, fake news. And that's just how people tie the knots to go pull them down, and that's all that was,
Yeah.
And sadly, in today's society, everybody's looking for something to blow up to make into the next clickbait, and that's all that's about.
I totally agree with that. This clickbait drives me nuts. Well,
yep.
The clickbait is don't get sucked into clickbait, because every story wants you to get angry, because fear, love, and hope are the three top motivators for people. And when people read something that makes them angry or fearful, they'll react. And that's what clickbait plays on that. So you always got to read.
And all they want you to go to their websites. They got more traffic count. That's all that's about. They're not interested in spreading positive things, or anything like that. They're just there to try to get analytics views for their page. That's all it's about.
Yeah. How many times did somebody see it? How many views? And you and I are kind of guilty of this too, because we both want donations. I want donations for my charity for medical research so we can help cure disease. You want donations for your blind research projects. And that's the driver of your giving. You're driving in many literal and figurative ways now. I suppose you kind of wrap it up. So one of your websites is blindfaith.org. Your main website is theblindmachinist.com. Hey, I had a question. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, whether it's related to racing or not?
The best piece of advice I received is a friend of mine who's a full quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and he called me after I went blind. He was in the Navy, had a car wreck coming home in the snow, and ended up being a quadriplegic. He's paralyzed neck down, and I used to work on his race cars. He didn't drive them. And Danny called me one day. He said, "Dan, take this one day at a time." He said, "If you try to worry about next week, next month, next year, you'll consume yourself with worry." He said, "Just take this one day at a time, and it'll all work out." And it's not easy, I've tried to stay focused and try to do that, and it's all worked out.
Oh, that's great. That one step forward, journey of 1,000 steps starts with one.
A friend of mine said, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." and that's true. Obviously, you're a runner and a triathlete, and there's a lot of us couch potatoes that want to do something, but you got to take that first step, just walking up down the driveway some, and then getting further and further. And that's what it's about in life, and so many things. Whether you want to write a book, that means at some point you got to get a journal out, pen and paper, or your typewriter, or your computer, and start writing. No matter what you want to do, you got to take those first steps and take it one day at a time and continue every day.
Yeah, my brother was saying you have to believe you can do it. You need your seat time, your experience. So you call it seat time. And in running, I call it feet time. You need that. Yeah. You need that time to support you. And, and money is not enough. These people came out to volunteer to help you. Just part of the excitement and being part of your vision. And
been truly blessed.
And you don't give up. I mean, this helps you retain a piece of your former self, instead of staying forever depressed and wallow in it. You're never going to be 100% of who you were before, at least physically, but mentally you are, and you can still get a lot of good out of it. And
and that's what I'm trying to do. Turning my tragedy into a triumph, and that's the name of my racing page on Facebook, Tragedy to Triumph Racing. And that's what we try to do, and set an example and let people know that no matter what your tragedy is, you can overcome it and hopefully turn something good out of it.
You say you can make excuses or you can make it happen.
That's right. That's been my life motto for a long time. And that's on all my pen boxes, my Made America pen bases that's laser engraved in it. And that's the way I've always, treated life and anything. You can make excuses, make it happen.
Yep. And sometimes we just need somebody like you to show us the way. You may have this problem, but you're still passionate and you're still finding a way. I mean, racers just don't know when to quit.
No.
Oh, the other thing I thought everybody could relate to as well is that you said holding a record is temporary. Someone else is going to come along and break it. No, you always got to stay on the top of your game.
That's right. And I know, there's going to be other people who go for this record. And Ben Felton, Australia, the fastest blind man on a motorcycle. He's been 160 on a motorcycle. He said he wants to come for this record. And one of his friends, Gary Dundas, he's going working on a project. And, there'll be somebody come for this record. And when they do, at that time, I'll decide if I want to go after it again, or we'll see where I'm at in life and, go from there. But typically racers, we don't take that very well. So we'll try to get right back. So we'll see where, when it happens, because it's going to happen, where we're at, and regroup and go from there.
Great. And you are truly extraordinary, an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. You are just unstoppable. You're a visionary, problem solver, self-motivated, determined, and you have a need for speed that just won't quit. You are unstoppable.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on. Any final thoughts? Any messages?
Just tell everybody to believe in themselves, distance themselves from doubters, and surround yourself with supporters, and anything's possible.
Anything's possible. I love it. Thanks, Dan. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it and learned a few things. Well, the people that we talked about today, they don't quit, and neither should you. Whether you're running marathons, rebuilding your life, or just searching for that next spark, you are more capable than you think. If this episode hits home, share it, subscribe, leave a review. Let's build this community together of relentless people who refuse to stop moving forward. And if you want to do something even bigger, support the mission. We're raising $1 million for medical research, and your support makes a difference. Check out our website at unstoppablestoriesthatmove.com. I'm Sally Head Dahlquist. Until next time, keep running, keep pushing, and never stop proving to yourself what's possible.